What's going on YouTube? So Back for Blood made a little update as of yesterday. Maybe some of you have seen it, maybe you haven't seen it. I'll leave a link to the description, or leave a link in the description below for this entire patch notes right here. I know a large portion of my community over here that subscribed started off on the Back for Blood. We're still going back to Back for Blood for more content later on. You'll see we'll be going through the patch notes briefly here if you want to read the rest of them. Obviously, like I said before, we'll leave that link down in the description. We'll go through a few things that they've keynoted on. Definitely some things got nerfed, some of the cards got nerfed, and we have some things coming forward as we look at the roadmap. There's more cards coming in, and there's going to be some more builds to work with. But let's get straight into it. Now, they definitely worked on a few things that were absolutely unnecessary. Players now recover health inside of Fort Hope. What a joke. Don't even know why they did that. Bots now use defibrillators more effectively. I'll tell you right now, if I comb through my footage, maybe the bots used it once, but I can honestly not remember one time the bots ever used a defibrillator, but pretty much this is how it should read. Bots now use defibrillators. Now, they made Nightmare a bit harder right here. We've got Blue Dog Hallow, Bad Seeds. Destroying the nest in Nightmare difficulty now spawns an endless horde. I remember this checkpoint. This was the starting mission after one of the first checkpoint, or I think the second checkpoint inside of Act 1 for Nightmares. So now they've essentially just made this a whole lot harder than it needs to be. The missions after this are increasingly harder as well, so I'm not 100% sure why they did this, but that's going to make your time in Nightmare a whole lot harder than it needs to be. And obviously, as we've seen before, Nightmare difficulty, they obviously haven't played the game, and they're just making it harder for no reason. But one thing they did help with was Dr. Rogers' Neighborhood got the research objective adjusted to account for solo players. This would have been extremely helpful and will be extremely helpful for people that are solo trying to go through Nightmare on this mission. 12 boxes was a lot harder for me especially, but this will make it a hell of a lot easier for players on solo. Now, they did a bit of nerfing to some of the cards. A lot of it you'll notice is going to be specifically towards the melee batter up. We're getting a 10% reduction to the melee damage right here. Brazen stamina efficiency is 20% instead of 30% now. Breakout, I mean, I thought this was a useless card before. It's still pretty useless for me. 3 seconds before you can break out is still too long for Nightmare. You're going to take too much damage from this. If anything, this may reduce it enough to where you're walking out with, just your arms and no legs when it comes to health. Face Your Fears adjusted to only giving you 2 temporary health instead of 3. That's kind of a huge change, but it's not a huge nerf. In my opinion, you're still gaining 2 temporary health, so you're essentially gaining 4. And one thing they did make a huge change on was Ignore the Pain now restores health instead of providing temporary health. So you're getting a little less temporary health and a bit more health. So we're still gaining that 5 health in general when it comes to a melee build. If you've got those 3 cards with, I can't remember what the other melee card that also gives you 2 standard health instead of temporary health, but that's going as well. Inspiring Sacrifice has health or the heal decreased to 20 over 15 seconds instead of 25 over 25 seconds. I think that may help you in a way, since sure we may have lost 5 health gained over time, but we reduced it down to 15 seconds, so I feel like we're gaining more health over those seconds than we would have with the 25 over 20 seconds. But at the same time, we are losing 5 health in general over this, but if you're stacking this, it's still going to work out pretty great for you. Mean Drunk, we've got melee adjusted down to 60% from 75. This isn't going to destroy the card completely. As you'll notice with Batter Up, we're still getting that 100% melee damage overall. Now, obviously, we would have loved to have more of that melee damage, but with 100% melee damage, we're still hitting hard with this. And as you'll notice, Meth Head stamina efficiency dropped down to 30%. You'll notice it, but it won't be something that destroys the build. Now, Money Grubbers did get hit pretty hard. Instead of gaining 5 per stack of copper up to 100, we're now gaining 3 copper bonus up to 75. It's not going to destroy this card as well, but you're going to get a lot less copper out of this. But at the same point, if you use this before, you'll know how strong it can be, and it's still going to be as strong as it was before, just not as much or not as profitable as before. Spiky Bits took a melee damage of 5%. Again, they're trying to nerf that melee build. If you've noticed, or if you've seen my melee build before, you know how strong melee can be inside of this game, and it's still going to be overpowered even with these nerfs. I assume maybe in the future that we have some new cards coming up that'll kind of mitigate these nerfs and kind of work in conjunction with melee itself. There may be a bit more of a hybrid feel to some of these cards that do a bit of melee, bit of accuracy. Goodness, I'm fumbling over my own words. What kind of moved down? They kind of essentially made breakers a bit stronger in a way, and they even decided to make it to where they call hordes every 60 seconds instead of 120. Arguably, I would have said 90 seconds would have been the preferred timer here, but I guess every minute, yeah, we're getting that. But they made them a lot stronger. Ogres got buffed as well. They've got now 17,000 health instead of 16,500, and their chest weak spot extra damage reduced to 500 from 2,000. I mean, you know, I know the shoulders aren't the hardest thing to hit, but they are a bit aggro, and when the fact that that chest damage is only going to be 500 from 2,000 out of 17,000, that's a bit overpowered in my opinion. Now when it comes to the Swarm, or the PvP update, this is, they added adrenaline fueled and meth head. We're going to have to definitely look into these cards, and now Ignore the Pain increases melee damage against mutations. This is going to really amplify the way that melee works inside of the PvP. You could see a couple of different builds come out of this. Arguably like maybe one or two, or maybe some of these cards work in conjunction with some of the other builds inside of it. That should be something interesting to play around. We'll definitely look into that in the future. I'll definitely have some new builds that kind of work around with these cards as well. Cleaner team now receives a handicap bonus of 10% damage increased for each cleaner missing from the team in Swarm PvP. That's going to be a huge help to people for those moments. If you played Swarm before, you noticed there's quite a few people that'll just drop out early on. It's very irritating, and just having that 10% damage, that could help you in the long run to possibly beat a 4-man team on the opposite side. Could be beneficial. I don't know if they're going to help you out with a Ridden as well, but that'll be a huge help when it comes to just playing as the Cleaner. Cleaners get a default 25% increase to ADS speed and 25% increase to weapon swap speed and swarm speed. Wow, that's interesting. I kind of like that. Didn't even notice that before, but Ridden themselves, they're kind of nerfing the Hawker to where you can't fire the Hawk in midair. I really do. I agree with this, and their health reduced because they can just move around really quickly. They can avoid damage, and 2 Hawkers on one team can completely destroy a team of cleaners. If they have 2 tall boys with them as well, they can clean up pretty quickly. And now if they miss, they're going to have an added 1.5 seconds to their timer before they can throw another attack. That's going to be greatly improved. Not sure exactly what the Evolution 2 reduced to 25 or 20% from 25 means. I'll have to look into that later on. Tall Boy's got a little bit of a health decrease. I would have preferred this gone down to 550 instead of just 600 by 25 health, because that's not much of a nerf in my opinion. Overhead melee swing radius is reduced. I think this means one of those moments where if you played Tall Boys before, you can kind of lock on, and if they move closer to your left side, you still have the ability to slam down on them. This could give cleaners a bit of an easier time, especially when it comes to Tall Boys, when they can just be charging at you and just constantly swinging down on you. They have strong mobility when it comes to that special infected. One thing to note, mutations. Infected wounds now reduce healing by 2% instead of 0.5%. That stack up from the common infected up to 40% reduced healing efficiency. That could last for 20 seconds. This is going to be one of those moments where you're going to need one of those healers with a lot of healing efficiency stacked on top of them. And when it comes to the melee weapons, they've increased the movement speed on all of the melee weapons and reduced the damage when it came to the axe and the hatchet. But they also made it to where you'll need 50% more melee damage in order to stumble Ridden. If you notice, the Bat was one of the strongest ones to stumble some of the special infected early on, and this isn't going to be too much of a nerf. You already saw before, if we've got Mean Drunk and Batter Up going, we've got 100% melee damage going. So this isn't really going to affect the bat when it comes to stumbling in general. They made some improvements to aim assist. We'll check that out later on. We'll get into that a bit later. They've renamed solo campaign to training because, I guess it's just not solo. But one thing to note is that in December they will make an offline mode for solo campaign progression. I think what this entails is essentially a solo mode where you can actually progress, unlock SWAT suit through Nightmare, or also get supply points from the solo mode itself. So you don't have other people to play with, or you just want to do it solo yourself. This is one of those modes that may be beneficial for you. I'm not exactly sure if it's going to offer the supply points, but I do believe it will offer the ability to go for that cosmetic SWAT suit when it comes to Nightmare. And solo decks are now renamed training decks. They did a good bit of useless stuff with this, and you'll definitely notice they did not do a lot of nerfing to Nightmare mechanics. One thing to note, though, heavy hitter card. If you notice this card before, how it can one-shot special infected with your fists inside of Nightmare mode. Now these effects now properly apply when killing Ridden with a melee attack. I'm not sure if this means that they fixed the melee with your fists, or if this means that they now count as melee kills with your fists and you gain those temporary health, or you gain the health from melee hits. So something to look into. I'll have to look into that a little bit later on. Now, fix some issues related to special spawning. I wish they went into a lot more detail with this. I don't exactly know what this is going to do, whether or not this is going to cap the number of special infected that are spawning, where they spawn, how they spawn, or possibly, some of those moments where you're killing special infected and then it felt like 5 seconds later they just got another one spawning in. Hopefully that got fixed. Hopefully a lot of these other things I just noted got fixed with this, but I wish they would have went into a lot more detail with that, especially when it comes to Nightmare. But you'll notice, a couple of things. Friendly Fire now doesn't remove Jim's passive ability. Fixed a bug. Now, this is one huge one. Fixed a bug where all trauma damage was blocked as long as you had one temporary health. I did not know this was something you could utilize, but now I think it definitely was something that benefited me through Nightmare with certain builds that I had going through, especially with Act 3. One thing to note out of this is that now, instead of having that one temporary health, taking damage, not taking trauma, now you're going to be getting a lot more trauma damage. This will affect a lot of the melee builds, so there may be some things that we need to mitigate and help out with that, possibly adding a bit more trauma resistance with the build as well. Could be something to look into in the future. I'll definitely be working with this later on. After this point, they kind of go through a lot of uselessness. Like I said before, I'll have the link in the description. You can go and read this over on your own. There's a couple of things that they did with the Swarm PvP. Nothing huge. And, there's some kind of Twitch extension. I need to look into that as well. But we'll just go into the roadmap for now. This is pretty short, sweet, simple. Got a few talking points to be said right here. As you notice, we're getting free updates across the board. When it comes to November, we got some quality life improvements, major bug fixes. I think that this may be the first update, but I think we'll have another update in the coming future. I think they have a lot to work on. If you'll notice inside of the patch notes as well, they have a Trello board on things that they're working on, looking forward to in the future. They'll have a link to that inside of that as well at that patch notes from the link in the description. But in the coming of December, we have all new features. We have new supply lines. We have Ridden practice areas. We have a holiday special event, solo offline with campaign progression, and new card types and all new cards. It's going to be huge. December's going to be a huge month for me at the same time. I'm going to have a lot of content going on. Going to be coming to Back for Blood. We're going to be making some new decks. I'll also have the Pacific Warzone integration to work with, Halo Infinite. We've got Battlefield 2042. Whole lot of content on this channel that's going to be coming with this. Back for Blood's going to be in the mix of that. I'll be doing, definitely a variety of things. We're going to see more Back for Blood videos coming in December especially. I'll have some coming later this month, working around some of these nerfs and any nerfs that may be coming in the future to make some new decks. I've also got some other decks I need to work on, possibly some Nightmare decks. But at the same time, we'll still be doing the COD Vanguard, doing the Pacific Warzone integration. We got the Battlefield 2042. Whew, we've got a lot to work with, a lot of content to be made, but for the coming future, they've got a new difficulty coming in when it comes to 2022. As you'll notice, a couple of rumors have said that this first expansion, 1 Tunnels of Terror, could be coming as soon as January. So that'll be something interesting. But this new difficulty, I believe this may be realism. If you played Left 4 Dead 2, this was one of those modes that was even harder than the hardest difficulty over there, or what would be harder than Nightmare over here. I believe it's one of those modes where if you die, the only way you can come back is through a defibrillator. You can't be picked off the wall. Adds a bit of realism. Friendly fire is extremely dangerous in that mode, even more dangerous than it was inside of Nightmare. And I believe trauma cannot be healed whatsoever. I believe there won't even be healing stations that you can pick up. You'll have to literally bare bone use a healer in order to heal anything, and I don't even think that healer will be able to heal your trauma damage. It's pretty much one of those modes where you probably just go in until you die from trauma or anything else. But we'll also have new player cards, we'll have new corruption cards, new co-op mode, melee updates. I think we're going to have new cleaners as well, and quality of life improvements. Hopefully they'll work around with Nightmare, make it a bit more doable and less RNG based and less focused on speed decks in order to complete it. Hopefully some of these new card types and new cards are going to help alleviate some of that coming into the future. It's one thing to look out for, but we also, like I said, all new cleaners written. Activity types, weapons cards, exclusive skins. Big thing to look at here is new cleaners and written. I'm really excited to see maybe possibly some like hybrid builds, some like melee with support. You've got different things that could be coming from this. The ridden type, that's going to be exciting. We're going to have some new things. Hopefully they just replace the spitter altogether, or just at least nerf it down to the ground. But new weapons, new cards. We've got a lot of content to be focusing on coming future, especially when it comes to December with the new supply lines, new cards. We're going to have new decks coming out, a lot more versatility, and hopefully by January, that expansion 1 Tunnels of Terror will have some new acts or new campaign missions to roll through, as well as possibly even some new cleaners coming forward. But I'll leave a link to this as well inside of the description. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope this was a bit insightful. I know a lot of you guys came around for the Back 4 Blood. We still got Back 4 Blood content coming in the future. I know possibly some of you didn't even notice this coming in. Didn't know there was some patch notes. It's something good to look over, especially if you're looking to progress in here. Maybe some things help you as well. But on that note, hope you guys have a good one. Hope this was informative for you, and keep rolling in the Back 4 Blood. We've got more content coming.